this book is, I think, tells each poem is the skeleton of some ghost, and the title it takes its name from an environmental type poem, and I wanted to show the cover specifically because the cover informed how I put this chapbook together. It's a chapbook, which is for the non-poetry watchers, a short collection of 30 some poems. But this collection I gathered over the beginning of the COVID emergency, and it was informed, to answer your question specifically, by a lot of what I was feeling at the time and how I was responding to what was going on in the world. And some of the poems were written during that March 2020, January 2020 time period, but some of them weren't. I pulled poems that I had written prior, and they hold, when I review them and look back at this book, a lot of it is, some of it's about climate change, some of it's about the pandemic, some of it's about being poor and on food stamps, some of it's about drug addiction, and some of them are homages to poets that I really love. I did a series of echo poems that I'll read today, which I don't know if that's like a formal rhetorical academic word or if I just made it up, but I took some Whitman and some Tennyson and rewrote those poems to speak to like the virus, and I used those poets, the bones of those poems, so sticking with this skeletal ghost theme for the book. And I think Kristen's book, the poems, Kristen, that you said you were going to read today, our work speaks well together, at least what we're going to talk about.
I hope so, yes.
Yeah, so that's the crux of this particular work. But its purpose is not, to be morbid or to, I don't know, to celebrate death. It's rather to, I think, I think of the word skeleton and bones and architecture is what comes to mind, because the book and the pieces inside of it are hollow and in a way. And when I read them, and when I hope my readers read them, they're filled with whatever longing, pain, desire, want, feelings are appropriate or are inspired by them.
Love that. I did. I've gotten your book, and I've read much of it. It just came in recently. But I would attest to that. You deal a lot with, of course, the theme of death and war and pain and struggle, but there's a hope and really a fullness of life that kind of fills the pages. So I think that's a really good description of your own book, which is hard to do. So nice. When I got kind of more serious about writing poetry than I had been for a bunch of years. I spent 10, 11 years extreme mama-ing, and then sort of went back to poetry, although I sort of always identified as a writer. I hadn't done much of it, not completing and editing anyway. So when I went back to it, it was just really just something, for myself, a reflection on a bunch of years then, but I didn't have a collection in mind. I was just really passionate about writing. So, you get to a point, you have so many poems. The collection's 87 pages, and I cut a lot. So at some point, you think, well, you get published different places, and you'd love to have a book out, have it in one place, have a book to show. So, so then it became a challenge, and I submitted a variety of incarnations of it, sort of taking out some themes. There's a lot of love and loss. There's sort of some family poems going on, and again, a lot of death poems. Sara and I sort of have an overlap there. So there were different incarnations. Ultimately, I don't know that anybody wants to read like a whole chapter, a whole chapbook of death poems. So ultimately, I organized it differently. It turned out that really a lot of the themes that I write about are sort of rooted in science. I'm not really writing about science. It's used as a vehicle for other thoughts. But it's a nice way to take sort of more emotional or abstract ideas and make them kind of physical, which I like to do with writing. So I decided at the end of the day to organize it kind of in accordance with Newton's laws of motion. So I have some poems that sort of suggest sort of a more, frantic, busy, in motion feel. So they're together. I have force, at rest, and reaction. That's kind of how all the poems fell. And somehow it kind of seemed to work. And then the title, Escape Velocity, it came from one of the poems, but it sort of tied together that theme. So that was a really nice rabbit hole I went down. And as poets, I don't know, I know I do, every couple of months, I'll waste a day just doing that, looking up various things that feel like a waste of time, but sometimes it pans out. So that day it did. So that's kind of how the book came together.
Thank you both for those insights. And I think what you both have described in these books is so very timely in terms of the psychological milieu of everyone right now who's kind of experiencing a host of different emotions and experiences, right? Not just because of the pandemic, but because of the so many interlocked challenges, experiences, victories of the past couple of years, and how they've all kind of risen to a point over the last year or two. So what I'd like to do, if you all are open to it, is jump right into doing a bit of reading from each of your books, of each of your poems, and we can discuss them together. And we can do that however you like. We can do trading off one by one, or if you want to do one person reads all of their poems at once and then we discuss, we can do that.
Oh, what do you think, Sarah?
I think it would be kind of neat since we've started as a conversation. I'll read one and then we can go back and forth.
That's great.
That sounds good to you.
I like that.
I picked a couple, but if we're gonna make music together, why don't we just improvise and see how it goes?
Sounds good.
I had selected a couple to read for this program of the echo poems, and and I guess I'll just start there because those are sort of the most academic ones. And Kristen, you can pick up the melody from there however you choose. But I wanted to explain these ones verbally before reading the poem. They're written from Whitman's. He was responding to World War I, and these are, or sorry, not wrong time period. This is 1865, and I'll read the Whitman poem first. So this would be Civil War, right? Yeah, 1865, after the Civil War. Just embarrass myself historically on YouTube. And then the second one is an 1881 poem and is written the echo poem that I wrote is written about the pandemic, but Whitman's poem is not about contagions. So I'll read the first one that is specifically about war, written 1865, post-Civil War. Whitman's poem is called How Solemn as One by One. And I'll just do his first. How solemn as one by one, as the ranks returning worn and sweaty, as the men file by where I stand, as the faces, the masks appear, as I glance at the faces studying the masks, as I glance upward out of this page studying you, dear friend, whoever you are. How solemn the thought of my whispering soul to each in the ranks and to you. I see behind each mask that wonder, a kindred soul. Oh, the bullet could never kill what you really are, dear friend, nor the bayonet stab what you really are. The soul, yourself, I see, great as any, good as the best, waiting secure and content, which the bullet could never kill, nor the bayonet stab, oh friend. So the mask in there hooked me a little, and my poem is called Distant. How isolating as one by one, as the screens flash white, white and black, as the faces scroll by where I lay. As masks appear, I search for my own, studying the masks. As I glance upward from this screen, studying you, dear user, wherever you are. How the thought of your tapping fingers to each post, desperate connections. I see behind each post that scrolling, a connected breath. Oh, the virus could never kill what we really are. The soul, ourselves, I see. Breath as one, masking one by one, waiting secure and separate from the virus that cannot reach, nor death take, dear user. And I'll just do the second one because it's short too. Thanks, Sadie. This one is Reconciliation. It's a little bit more famous, one of his poems. The Whitman version is, word over all, beautiful as sky. Beautiful that war and all its deeds of carnage must in time be utterly lost. That the hands of the sisters death and night incessantly softly wash again and ever again this soiled world. For my enemy is dead. A man divine as myself is dead. I look where he lies, white-faced and still in the coffin. I draw near. I bend down and touch lightly with my lips the white face in the coffin. And my poem is called Harmonizing Antigens, and it's the echo of reconciliation. Contagion overall wraps us as song, wrapped that melody with all its operatic tenor, must in course the singer lose breath, that the hands of the sisters, alto and soprano, achingly, lovingly, wash again and again, ever again, themselves infected, for the enemy is internal, swirling divine inside ourselves. I refresh the screen's white face, reflecting the dead by commas. You, number on my keyboard, I touch with hands washed, expired lives, echoing arias for antigens. And I think I'll kick it over to you, Kristen, but I'll just say those two, I was really struggling when I wrote those to compose poetry. And so I was looking for poets. I was just like returning to poets that I like. And I read a lot of Whitman and was reading Ginsberg again and Blake and just like a lot of the male poets that I had read in my bachelor's degree. And I started finding these war poems and poems written in response to plague and the 1919 flu. I was like, well, these are great. Like, this is the same sentiment that the world is struggling with. And so I just rewrote them, like kind of plagiarized the poem, but it felt very, felt connected in a way with the work. So I don't know if they work for other readers, but.
Yeah, no, I do believe they do. Yeah. And it's really, there's some things that I was thinking, you know, when I heard you and when I read them, that if you brought into a poetry workshop, the original poets would have been criticized, you know, and they're greats, right? And it's sort of empowering to play with that, you know. I mean, the parenthetical phrases and the use of second person and the kind of breaking of the, you know, I'm not the third wall, fourth wall, but it works to play on that, but it also, I mean, just shows you all the variety of things that poetry can be, you know. It's neat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and read one that I wasn't planning on reading, but I actually forgot I wrote it. It was one of the pandemic poems I've written, and it touches about screens. And I should have thought about reading it tonight because you're just so good with all your technology poems, and there's so many screens in them. So when screens replace touch. Invisibility, I say, when my son asks what superhero power I would choose. I wasn't much older than he is when I set my goal to be a disembodied spirit. I think I'll have that one day because I'm lucky. I'd forgo touch if I could go unseen, but I'd rather have it all. The feel of wind and fingertips, skin and hair, and to be out of sight. Fond of woods and yurts and tents, for their simple beauty, it's true, but also their lack of mirrors. I don't perceive a movie of me when we talk, which is why it scares me when you ask, why do you look like that? Why did you make that face? How do I know? I can't see me. A man once responded only to my words. He held still my hand through grimace, shrug, even tear, never asking. I tag him the one that got away. Can't faces be just about the rest? Breath, links, kisses, sustenance, and not freckles and wrinkles, pretty eyes and cute noses, crooked teeth and dark circles. Yet here we are, you watching me and me watching me, and I don't know where else to look.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's been difficult during the pandemic being on Zoom. I teach, so I've had to see myself far too much, and I make some really strange facial expressions, and I didn't realize that until watching myself for a year. So it's been painful. But if that's the worst I get out of the pandemic, I'm lucky, right?
Yeah, no, the line about why I don't know why I make these facial expressions, I can't see me. And then I don't know if you intended the tagging part to be when you wrote, I'll tag you as the one that got away as social media tagging, but that's what it
oh,
when I heard you say that.
Sure, I intended that. No, I didn't. That's great. That's a great connection.
Yeah, because the poem
I do think though, like a lot of what I do with my poetry isn't really conscious. You know, I'm not formally well trained. I didn't study poetry. I don't have my MFA, but I feel like a lot of the internal rhymes and the cadence and the line breaks. I feel like a lot of it's just intuitive, right? And like you're sort of trying to tap into something, a little bit subconscious even, right? So on some level I might have intended it.
I like that poem a lot. It's sort of the staring into the digital mirror, but also aware of how you're internally looking at yourself. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read one in response to that.
Good, great.
Yeah. And you had some things in there about how the face looks and the awareness of the woman's body, which I really liked. I like that a lot. Thank you for reading that. So this poem in the book is actually a selection from, it's in Nothing You Feel Here Belongs Here, but it's going to be out in the book that's coming out soon called Call Me Spess.
Okay, good, yeah.
Stay tuned. Forthcoming from Mad Hat Press, hopefully in the next couple months. These are device love poems, and the premise of this coming book is sort of similar to what you just read. It's an observation of what technology does when it looks at us. So the speaker here, the narrator, is the iOS on the cell phone. So I selected it as a part of Nothing You Build Here Belongs Here, as to keep in line with your initial question, Shady. I thought these poems represented that longing and sort of like the aching absence that all the books or all the poems in this book hold, because the speaker, as all the speakers in these poems do, are like searching for something, and this speaker, even though it's an imagined, made up AI, is aching for something. So it is called Device Love Poem number 2. Zoom in. User, your reported screen time is up. Might you be lonely re our last conversation, or might you be craving that thing Edelsar mentions, marriage, or someone to cook, or Just give him his papers. Might you benefit from targeted Spanish language learning ads? What about this news headline, New York Times 1619 Project Incites Racism? The same, always. Reading, 30 seconds, closing the browser. This means I love you. Is this helping 00101? I've been trying to show you mornings when you wake. I'm the first thing you grasp, cradled in the fleshy part of your palm. Like I have soft powdered moth wings, I kiss back. This is how I have listened, learned, gathered significant, frequent memories on this day, 5 years ago. Keep me on so I may learn you. You express kiss 101, love, hug, sex 0, kiss 0, love 1, morning 0, human blood is warm in veins, flash memory, persistent bits, moving bits, rams of silence containing single cell bits, durable, fast, do not heat, I glow up, glow, only picked up, screens, lights, waking, glow, heat, blood is warm, love, morning, kiss, wake. This is a feeling, love, iOS 12.4. Scene.
Nice. I wonder if I don't think I've heard you read that one before. I wonder how it would translate differently just to be around the page. I mean, it's like performance art, right? I mean, your reading of that, you're really feeling for the operating system, right? That's wonderful.
She's a character at this point.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I tend to avoid like that was probably my only poem that really deals with technology, I think. But the longing that's captured there, that's really amazing. I do a lot of longing in my poetry, of course. That's awesome.
Something that was remarkable about that one to me, not just in your delivery, which was very, very on point. So much so that you can definitely feel the machine of all of it, if that makes sense. But also the sort of disjointed experience of flashes of such wildly different emotions that it's such a part of, especially our phones, scrolling through our feed. And, one post, I can't remember the line exactly, but, one post is, how to make chicken tikka masala. And then the next one is like a bomb in Syria. And then the next one is 5 fun tips for plants in your house, sort of just a whirlwind, a roller coaster, so to speak. So I definitely could really relate to that.
Yeah. And that feeling of like, I think I'm getting old because I just on TikTok. And when I get on TikTok, it's really like overwhelming to me. But the like, I like engaging with these new social media things because that's what this poem is trying to do. It's like capture that like quickness of what digital technology does for us, which is like turn on your brain, like captures the dopamine and whatever it's like whatever it does, and it's exactly what you said, JD. It's like really intense political thing happening, puppy. Oh, friend got married, sober 10 years, person died, like recipe. Yeah, and it's like all this stuff, and then the book too, like I have these different poems kind of next to each other, and it's a little disorienting when I hope for the reader it is a little disorienting to read it, like you have this one, maybe I'll read the Winston poem. I haven't read that poem in a while. In Nothing You Build Here Belongs Here. It's a selected poem from a collection I read a long time ago, and it's the voice in that piece is very innocent, and it's surrounded by pieces that are intense. And like Kristen, you had some I forget the one that you emailed that you said you were going to read, but Underneath Quarantine, yeah, that reminded me of that one. I have a poem that like sandwiches, maybe you could just read that one so people know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then I have a poem that's sandwiched by two very intense poems that's very innocent. And so just sort of rounding out this thought that I'm spewing, the device poem attempts to do that and capture the experience of what it's like to live in this online world. But the narrator is reflecting back what your poem that you read prior was doing too, in a way. Like I wrote this narrator as a way to sort of be a mirror, and that what the mirror is doing is being a person that's trying to, like, if there was someone on the other side that was trying to understand we are experiencing by watching us, you know, like as if the iOS is a child. It's like, what are you doing? What's happening to you as you're using this? Because it is sort of fascinating to me that we just do this. Like we engage with Zoom and we adapt, which is great. Like it's great that we have adapted poetry to this, to bookstores. Like you have both online readings and in person for Lost City, but also like we should be questioning this stuff as it's happening. So I think that's enough for that one poem.
Kristen,
No, I'm frozen.
I feel like you have another poem for us, right?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read Underneath Quarantine. I think, I don't know if everybody saw it, but it looked like I missed the end of what Sara was saying. She glitched on my screen just a little bit.
Yeah, I think I froze. I lost all you guys, so.
Okay. All right, Underneath Quarantine. Because you could be anyone and I fall on a dime, let's bore into quarantine, right through to the other side, outside and inside, out spaces. Let's walk between shadows of ghosts, of crowds, jerking from the touch of points of ponytails and jacket cuffs, down aisles, between bookshelves, around dance floors, in gazebos above koi ponds. Because I don't really know you. You could be everyone. Let's share a kiss in memory of touch and communion. Let's play Russian roulette. I feel lucky that we fall in the uninfected 30% because you have face and fingers, and those are remarkable things. It's already been so long, and some truths hurt. Because still, honesty. Let's quarantine together, spread all the good and danger that radiates and seeps. Let's meet. I'll buy the sake. We can share a glass.
I like the end, though. It's just such a warm way to end that poem. And the line about fingers, we both have fingers and what was the other thing? Eyes,
faces.
Yes. Fingers and faces. Obvious.
Remarkable.
Yeah, obvious lines like that. Like when we have fingers, we have faces stuck in the middle of the poem, jump out to me as really powerful lines, I think, because they're obvious in a way that makes them bold-faced in a poem like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, in context, it's, it was a warm ending, but it's almost, I mean, like we can't do that now, right? Like you'd never be like, hey, try my drink. This is a good, you can't do that anymore. It's so interesting, the ways that we now have divisions between us. And it's just interesting to think, will we ever get back to where we were, if we even should, but I'm going to read one more. That was actually really early in the pandemic that I wrote that. I was actually going to go on a date, but I didn't go anywhere. We didn't share sake. My daughter made me cancel it because I had a quarantine, because she's, kind of my parent. So she called that one. So I stayed home and I wrote a poem. But when I wrote it, I was actually thinking of the AIDS crisis in the 80s, when it was also like that, right? Like you couldn't, I mean, it was like an act of rebellion and sort of fetish thing to, kiss strangers or do, so it's a whole different cultural. So I wrote sort of a poem comparing the two. And this is called Like It's New. Lonesome in being young sharpens, coming of age in the 80s, the older look at the lips of the younger like murder. Parents won't share a sip, even if it's alcohol. 100,000 dead and dying. An epidemic feels just like a pandemic if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. 2 a.m. at Boot Hill Saloon Cemetery can't be the right place, except when I knew he shot crack through his veins and I might stop him. I suppose we all want to die a bit anyway, especially me when he eluded being found. Invisible like viruses. Still we hunt in sideways looks at others, supposing the cleanliness of fingernails or shape of eyes might expose harbored sickness. Harbor grudges for the skateboard thrashers, always at the parks, sharing high fives and Pepsis. Selfish youth in congregation of laughter and risk, intent on killing us all, as though it's not the time of their lives. Neat with quarters to hold cell phones, not fistfuls of quarters. Husbands, second husbands, cats, dogs, debt, music, and the ceaseless bad news. We hide in our homes and act as though we've never seen a plague before.
Mm. That's beautiful. I mean, that could be written anytime.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's beautiful, but yeah, it's really, it's always something, right? Every decade we suffer some
No, I think, I think that's,
challenge.
I stick with the word beautiful for that.
Thank you.
I think I want to explain what I meant by warm for the last sentence of your poem. Like hopeful, as if when you're when you're freezing and you're looking forward to sitting in front of a fire. That's how it felt warm.
Right, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. And what you just read was delicate and fragile in a beautiful, that's how it felt beautiful, I think, to me, because there's a piece in there about being the cleanliness, being I think I missed the second piece of it, but something about the fingernails and the cleanliness being significant of health. Was that right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the way that we judge each other, right? So the shape of the eyes would be, sort of a not so hidden, like, criticism of people calling the coronavirus, whatever they call it, Chinese virus, whatever. I mean, that's, it's just crazy. And so, that's kind of a nod to the discrimination against Asian people in the country. But yeah, cleanliness of nails, just the judgments we make about each other. I don't know. My fingernails are always dirty. I have to keep polished on them.
Thank you.
And it's funny because, so I'm a special ed teacher, and one of the assessments that you do to like rate the kids on their like functional behavior or whatever, like one of the questions is literally like fingernails clean. Every time I have to score that, I'm like, who the hell cares? But so I feel strongly about it. So it came out of my poem.
Absolutely. I think that both of those poems too touch on sort of the both the simplicity and the grace of human connection and intimacy in the first one that you read, and also the complex rebelliousness of intimacy in times that are strained or dire, like now, like during the AIDS crisis as well. I think that those really encapsulated that tension, whether it's like the aching, beautiful tension kind of in the first one, or the sort of like the fire in the second one. It really comes across.
Thank you. It's good to know.
I'll take a moment here too to remind our viewers as you're watching that if you have questions for our authors, you can drop them as a comment right below the live stream that you're watching right now. And we'll get around to the questions in the chat in just a few minutes. But I'd like to continue if you all have more to read and discuss. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I would love that. Sarah, would you like to share another? Do you have another in queue or?
I think my connection is a little, yeah, I have a short, can you guys hear me? I think my connection's a little bit fuzzy.
I can now, yeah.
Am I still connected?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's going on with this internet. I'll read a short one in the off chance that it gets cut out. This is kind of in response to those two you just read, Kristen. It's called Kissing Nowadays. Lips lost behind new clothes, my children's green eyes wide. Above masks covering noses, shyly they giggle, say I must have lied. When I tell them we used to touch mouths to show we were happy. That's it.
I love that one. That's beautiful.
I wasn't going to read that, but the two you just read made me think of it.
Yeah, nostalgic for something that, well, isn't gone yet, but
yeah,
you know, beautiful.
It's interesting to read these. I don't know how it feels for you to go back through your book now that it's published, but when this book came out for me, I was looking through some of these, and to read the collection as I had arranged it in the middle of the pandemic was really interesting, because I had felt a certain way when I put these poems together, and that I think that feeling was just like extreme uncertainty. And I had certain ideas about what I thought the world would look like in a month or a week or something, but then being in the position to look at these poems and remember what I thought back then was just, I don't have anything like conclusive to say about it other than reading them now to viewers is, I think we're probably still all having the same experience, right? Like everybody's digesting the pandemic still. And so having poetry that responds to the unrespondable, I don't know, death. Maybe this just brings us back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Like how do you write a poem about a ghost or something that doesn't exist?
Something that came up in a conversation with a longtime friend of mine recently that was really interesting is that they said to me, all of the best conversations I have nowadays are about death. Like all of the conversations that feel good are talking about death and finding joy in that connection and making that, just bringing it out to the surface,
I love that.
That's super interesting, right? I do too.
Yeah. Like the openness about it, or just vulnerability?
Yeah. I think the openness about it and just sort of looking into the face of that inevitability and realizing that death is just the one thing that all human beings have in common, so to speak. And I think looking at it that way sort of creates a bit of solidarity and a bit of I like the word that you said earlier, nostalgia for something that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just was going to read one short one, unless Kristen, you have one that you're thinking of, just in response to what you just
go for
read.
it. Yeah.
This one's called On the Historic Register. It's towards the end of the collection, and just DC inspired. And it goes, city of skeletons shoulder formal doors, heavy black rows grow out of concrete, canopies of trees, silence, electric candles flicker, paired sentinels guarding whitewashed frames, muted green, maroon, marching ghosts one by one on Corcoran Street. Say nothing stuffed so close together, ribcage bump, only creaking and moaning, to join an ambulance wailing, screaming towards the broken and bleeding, hauled from cavernous bowels, growling in agony as owners die. Sell, place liens, homes deeded, passed, or burned, caskets we share. And that is Corcoran Street. I really like. It's beautiful, but the houses are they're like these. They look like sentinels or guards at night, and there's not a lot of people that walk there. And I remember having the feeling of walking down that street and feeling like the houses were, I don't know, like alive, or like they had some kind of body, and that's what I imagine might be inside. So it sort of held the theme for the whole book, I think, the idea in that poem.
Yeah, I can
amazing imagery.
Amazing, yeah, absolutely. I can really feel the aliveness of the house through these words. And I think as we're kind of, the overarching theme of our discussion has kind of been about intimacy, about bodies, about the distance and the technology that kind of interrupts that intimacy or enables it, right? And when you start talking about the sort of spirit of a house and the mood that it has, I think that's a really strong and old human attribution, right? To like the soul of a house is something that I think humans have been seeing and feeling and thinking about for as long as we've had houses, right?
Yeah, and it's totally projected idea. But to your point about comfortability with very, very typically uncomfortable concepts like death and dying, I think about that very often, like walking down the street, and in moments that inspire extreme beauty for me. And Krista, I don't know if you've ever read this essay, but it's On Dying by Freud, and he talks about, it's one of my favorite pieces of writing of all time. It talks about how beauty and death are the same thing, and as humans we recognize things as beautiful because we recognize them as dying. And he gives the example of the rose or a flower, and beauty in women or young people, as our minds understand that it is fleeting, and because it is perishing or only there momentarily, we see it and identify it as something beautiful. But it is also recognition that it is going away and dying. And so those two things are happening at the same moment. And I think that's like just such a intense concept. And in these poems, and I don't know if Kristen, if you think, yeah, I think your poems do that too, for me, at least when I read them. I try and get at that balance because it's such a tender concept and an idea for a human to, and then to connect with others, Shady, like you're saying, to try and have that sort of like vulnerable communion with another person.
Absolutely, yeah. Kristen, would you like to read another poem, or do you want to launch into more of a discussion of, I'd like to hear both of your thoughts about sort of the uses of poetry as a whole, and how your work kind of adds to the lexicon, and maybe what some of the reactions you've had to your work have been that have stood out to you, for example.
Yeah, I could go either way. I could talk about that or another one. Yeah, let's go ahead and have the conversation. That's pretty interesting. Especially in DC, there's such a call for poetry as social justice, and to be timely and to be political. And I think I'm really just exploring the sort of current events, contemporary poetry myself, in terms of like trying to do it in a timely way. But it's such a potentially important function, and certainly locally is. And I know, Beltway Quarterly, definitely has a piece of that, right? That you're sort of on the front lines of using poetry as political advocacy, social justice. I think it's interesting as one role of poetry.
So the question is, how do we fit in to the poetic landscape? That allows me to fit myself by answering. That's a great question, because I'm still a very young poet. I mean, we both are, Kristen, with baby, 1-2 books. Like that's nothing compared to some of these.
It's a whole book.
You know who I'm thinking of, Mr. with 20 million books. I think what poetry is teaching me as a woman, person, citizen, is how to look people in the eye and be there in the moment with them, and be most myself. And to be a little more specific about that, maybe I had a conversation tonight in which I was explaining what I was doing on my poetry reading. I have another life in which I have another job, and I was leaving that job, and the person asked me, what do you do? When you read your poetry, do you perform it? And so I had to explain about how I read it or what it was. And I said a certain amount of things. Like sometimes it's performance, sometimes I do editing, like Kristen, you mentioned on the Beltway, where I read other poets' work and help put it in the magazine, or it's so fun for me to read new poets and to publish them for the first time and to be a part of that journey, because for me that was, it's the most special moment in the world when you are either published for the first time in a magazine or get your book in the mail for the first time. I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have your story about when that happened, but I remember the exact moment of when it happened. So I'm rambling about this question, but where I see myself, I guess, in this particular moment in my life in poetry is as a servant to it still. I don't know that I can answer what school I belong to yet. I think I'm in a school of Beltway poets that belong to the DC area, even though I've moved now to New York, because I've integrated myself with the poets in DC and tried to serve that community. And so as much as possible, I because I love to write poetry and to do that art, I see myself as also being a servant to the art as much as possible, because I love it. And when I love something, I want to help it or give myself to it in a way that I'm able to. That's the best answer I have right now. Ask me in 10 years.
I will. I'll take you up on that. So as these books are coming out, what are either some reactions that you've had so far, or some that you are interested to find out? How people react to certain poems or certain meanings, certain themes in your books.
I'll let you go first because I just talked for a while.
Oh yeah, well, if I had a good answer to that, I'd love to answer it. But the whole writing activity, I love the process. I'd probably stare out my window more than I write, but I love that. Like, I love everything about it. On the other side of publishing, I have a book, which is so exciting and cool, right? Like, I've been my whole life with that. But on the other side of it, you want to get it out. I think that maybe different people do that. Some better than others. Probably me, not so well. It's definitely not the piece of the process that I'm most comfortable with. So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be sort of a slow rollout. My book came out in June. I had a launch party. I haven't set up a whole bunch of readings or many things, and I haven't done a whole lot of publicity for it. So that's another piece of it, which is interesting to think of the artist as a promoter, or that's just a whole different skill set. And I'm not even really sure how much I'm interested in any of that. So, but locally there are some really great poets who I admire and love reading. And my book was well received by a lot of them, which I'm friends with a lot of them, so maybe that's part of why. But I think anyway, it's been heartening kind of feel like I've got some kudos from people who I really respect locally for my poetry. So yeah, you know, because you don't really know, right? I just sit here in my nook and stare out the window and write and hope it's good. But it feels important enough for me to spend the time. And you know, I have a lot of things that I love doing. So so it's pretty important to me. But it's good to know that it resonates with other people.
Absolutely, thank you.
Quick, or we're out of time, so I can.
Oh, go for it.
I think I did like one interview so far, and I know that there's a review coming out at some point on it, but I've heard that the architecture is good, which I love hearing about the book, like the structure of, I mean, obviously it's a book, that's not what I mean, but how the poems are put together inside of it. Because ultimately it's a thing you read. And so when the reader is reading it, I want the reader to have a good experience. So I hope that whoever is watching all the way to the end picks up a copy and reads it and enjoys it, because I attempted to stitch the poems together in a way that was an enjoyable experience. And so far I've heard that is, I mean, there are blurbs on the back that are readily available, but some of the feedback I've gotten so far is on the architecture of the book, which is something that I've spent a lot of time on. And I see our time is up, but I also, just to ping back to something you said at the beginning about escape velocity, Kristen, the way you structured the book, I really loved hearing about, because structure is a huge thing for me in poetry. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you both. This has been a really wonderful reading and discussion. I like that we did the back and forth with the poems, because I really enjoyed how you two played off of each other and kind of built up what ended up being kind of a thematically unified reading. And of course, now there's an ambulance outside my window making a lot of noise. So thank you both so much. Let's end on the note with letting our viewers know where they can find more of your work and where they can keep up with what you're doing.
Yeah, my website's the best place, because it has all my social media and stuff. It's just my full name, www.saracahillmarron.com. And the middle name is on the front of my book. It's Cahill. I think that's also on your website, right, Shady?
Awesome.
Oops, I was on mute.
And that would be for me too, my website, Kristinsky Farragut. So instead of Kristen Kowalski Farragut, Kristen with SKI, Polish, Kristinsky. Right. Anyway, that's my website, and the book's out from Kelsey. So it could be ordered there. Sarah's too.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you. And for our viewers at home, remember that you can buy these books at Lost City Bookstore on 18th Street, or hop onto our website and find them there. And you can stay tuned for lots more author events, either in person or live stream, just like this. And our in-person events are also live streamed. So if you're out in New York City and you can't make it, you can still watch on YouTube. Down the line, I hope to have you both back and see you again in person someday soon. This is such a delight. Thank you so much again. And I hope that you both have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for having us.